Welcome to Her Voice panel. My name is Malia Collins. I'm the Director of Marketing for Chando Wines, which I see some of you enjoying already. We are so excited to be here. Whenever Tamik brought up the idea of presenting Chando at Her Voice panel, we couldn't pass up the opportunity. Chando, the Latin meaning for Chando actually means to weld, which literally means coming together, something our winemaking team truly believes in. They scour the world for the best grapes, the best vineyards to produce this lovely wine that you have in front of you. And we are so excited to share in the female vision for winemaking and obviously for filmmaking as well. So cheers, thank you. So excited to introduce Alexander Chando, who is gonna be our host for the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I mean, this weather, I'll tell you what, it's gonna make for a beautiful video. The filmmaker in me is like, this is gonna be beautiful. I appreciate everyone for coming out. This is my 5th time doing this event, and it just makes me super happy to be able to bring together amazing women. This year, it's a little different. Usually we have like a full panel, but we have 2 amazing women who are using their voice in very powerful ways. And I'm excited to have them. Just to say thank you to Chando and to Tavi Activewear for being our sponsors this year. We're very appreciative. We can't do this on our own. And to Burgers, thank you for allowing us to host here. I would like to introduce Stephanie Simbari. Stephanie is a writer. She is a comedian. She had a podcast for 5 years. 7 years. I really did my research. No, she had a podcast for 7 years called That's So Retrograde. She's about to do another podcast, but she also sold a pilot to FX most recently that she's in the development stages of. And we also have Marty Go. Marty directed Rise. I don't know if anybody saw Rise last night. It was its world premiere. She's a writer, a director, a producer, and I'm Alexander Chando. I just want to start by asking, for me, one of the biggest, I always ask this question, and it's kind of a very baseline question, but I always like to ask, what is your why? Because I think it's really important. I think that this industry particularly is really hard to navigate, and there's so many highs and lows, and it's so easy to say, I'm out. Like, I can't do it anymore. So I know for me, it's super important to know what my purpose is and why I'm hanging in there and why I'm doing it. So I'd love to know each of you.
Hi again, I'm Marty. Purpose is huge for me. You know, that's something that I think about for every project that I pursue and agree to take on and direct or write or produce. My why is, you know, I really look at the type of impact I want to make around the world, and that's using film and the word of the script and putting messages out there to really connect us all so that people realize that no matter our skin, our gender, our beliefs, that we are the same and that we are equal, and discovering that through every story, seeing someone else's point of view and seeing that we all feel the same insecurities and vulnerabilities, and really just bringing that into awareness. I think through film we can connect that way, and that's my why.
I would say mine is about bringing healing and also bringing joy. I feel like my purpose as an artist started as a very young person, more just wanting to like express myself, and then it changed when I encountered certain roadblocks in my own health or my own consciousness, and then realized that like through exploring what I was going through and expressing it in a healing way, that would like bring healing to others. And so that's really what it's all about for me.
I like to touch on that a little bit more because I feel like that is a common theme for both of you. Healing through art is, I mean, a lot of artists, we do things for our own healing and for other people's healing. And there's so much content in the world right now, and we are inundated by content, and not only on like the major streamers, but like TikTok and Instagram and all of the smaller little outlets. And when you're talking about trying to heal the masses, but also trying to really make an impact, how do you feel with all of this content and all of the different ways? How do you feel that can be done? Like how do you really kind of zero in on that in your work, but also just in a general way?
I don't think you can really think about like the masses when you do anything. It's way too overwhelming to think in that way. Like, at least I can't. I just think about what moves me, what interests me, what is like lighting me up, what I'm exploring, what makes me laugh. And then I just go from that place. And I feel like we're all so connected and we're all sharing so much all the time that whatever is inspiring you or helping you, it's very likely that there's 100 other people or more that are having a similar experience like to what you're saying. So I think starting with yourself, but not in a way that's like, I'm the most important person and I need to say this, but like, no, coming from the heart in a genuine place of like, this is what's moving me, then other people are going to connect with it.
Right.
I mean, that's what I tell myself.
No, I think it's the same thing. Like to think about affecting everyone is like so overwhelming when there's so many crazy weirdos out there who try to like take you down. But like, honestly, like I can only think about hopefully changing one person's life and helping them feel positive and hopeful for tomorrow. And if I could just affect one person and be like, you know what, you're not alone. I've been through that too, and I survived and I'm okay. Then I think our job is done, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I feel like when I'm putting something out there and I get one person telling me like that really helped me, I'm like, great. Then I'm feeling like motivated and inspired to keep doing it. And I don't really listen, like, it's funny, I don't get too much pushback except for on certain things. But I know if I'm going into something that's more, I guess, controversial. And talking about controversial things is also something that I'm interested in because I feel like there's way too much controversy over things that are not really controversial in today's world. But again, I think talking about it from a place of personal experience, heart, not being judgmental, not being righteous, and just being like, this is how I feel. I think like we all need to make space for allowing other people to feel the same or differently than us. And then that's how we're really affecting each other.
Totally. I feel like, especially these last few years, it's been really hard to feel like if you have a differing opinion, that you have the space to actually express it without feeling like you're going to be like chastised for it. On that, Steph, so you sold a pilot to FX.
It's like so great because most of the time no one ever knows that. And like if a TV show doesn't get made, then it's just like dies. So it's like now you guys all know.
But
thank you.
But so you're in the development process.
Yeah.
You went through a script, and what's that been like after what we've just been talking about? Because TV it is more of kind of the corporate. They have people to answer to, and so what is that process like for you, and how has it been for you to really feel like you are continuing to use your voice, but also kind of under the umbrella of like television corporate structure, like a studio giving you all your notes and a network giving you your notes?
I think I'm lucky because FX is so cool. And also because it's a comedy. So I think I can get away with a lot through being funny. And by like saying things through the mouths of these characters that I myself want to say, but maybe like people won't like it. So I can have other people say it, and that's cool. I don't know. I haven't really experienced yet. And it's maybe because we're not at the point where we're like ready to shoot the pilot. We're still in the piloting phase. But again, like, I think because the show's theme is about healing and about like laughing your way through like messy human experience, you can be gross and you can be problematic because healing is gross and problematic. Sorry to say. You know, like it really is. And so they were letting us get away with it because they know that it's true. And I think just telling what's true always helps. What's true to you. You're not being like, this is a universal truth. Like, don't try to do that. Just try to say what's true for you. And then, you know, maybe they'll be like, well, don't say it like that. But I haven't encountered that. It's more just like make it funnier.
Right. Well, that's great.
Rude.
And Marty, with Rise, just to kind of zero in on that, I don't know, whoever missed last night's Q&A, Rise is based on many women's true stories. And so how do you stay true when you're writing? How do you stay true to other women's stories? And how do you really kind of make sure that you're staying true? I said true like 32 times in that, but y'all got it.
I think it's like what you're saying. It's like, well, how do you come from your point of view when you're writing? And, you know, I never went through the trauma that they did to that extent, but I do have experience in that. It was with a traumatic childhood. And so relating my issues with theirs at a much different level, taking their stories and trying to personalizing it to how I felt, you know, when abusive things would happen. I think that we can connect in that way, and so that you didn't feel so separate. You know, when you show stories of Nigerian girls, like that's so far from here, and you're like, oh, that doesn't happen to me. That's so far, but there's so many similar things that happen here, and we all feel that in our own little lives. And so staying true to the spirit of what it feels like to be a person, to be a woman, to be oppressed and abused, like that's something that we can all relate to. And I think it's just taking stories and relating it to yourself and trying to relay that through dialogue and through action.
And like give them what they want without giving them what they want. You know what I mean? to the corporates.
Right. Yeah.
Like package it in a way that like is digestible but is still doing what you're doing. Like I think it's really hard when we're in that situation as artists to be in that structure, because it ends up like forcing us to ask the question, do we want to compromise our integrity and do we want to compromise our voice by making them happy? And that's like that's the reason why we became artists, is to not do that. Right. So then to be like put up against that is such a challenge. And so I think like what I've learned to do, instead of getting frustrated and getting mad and having my own resistance, I just like treat the resistance like it's the path and ask it to create solutions and opportunity for me to say it differently, instead of being like, oh, fuck these people, they don't get it. It's like, okay, well, they're the ones paying you. They're the ones who are going to put the show on the air. So instead of being mad at them, just like exercise what you have, which is creativity, and do it a new way. And like, they're not going to notice most of the time.
And I just want to add on to that too, just like my experience with working with like multiple executives and producers, not on Rise, but on an Amazon Blumhouse movie that I did. We had like 20 producers telling me all these different notes, completely different. And, you know, with the theme of this whole talk is like owning your voice as a director, like being able to be like, okay, I agree with this note, but this one, I don't quite relate to that, and I'll tell you why. And really like stepping into yourself and being confident enough to express yourself and being like, guys, this is where I want the story to go, and this is why I want to do it. And then people will, executives don't necessarily, they've never directed. They don't know what it's like to write necessarily. And so when they see somebody confidently standing and owning their voice and their opinion, they're like, you know what? I trust you.
Yeah, like you make them understand.
Right.
And then another thing I've done, which is like sort of like obnoxious, but I guess it's a Scorpio in me, I'll do all their notes and then they'll read it and be like, this isn't good. And it's like, yeah, those are your notes.
Exactly.
So then they're like, can you go back to what it was? And you're like, okay.
Yep. I've absolutely done that, where I take everyone's notes. I'm like, oh God, this is so, okay, sure. And then it's just a mess. And it's like, no, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's a great point where, people, especially like on sets where you have like a video village of 17 people behind you. It's like, at what point you need to not be directing by committee. Obviously those opinions are important. Those notes are important. You have to kind of serve whoever is funding and the studio and the producers and everything. But at the end of the day, serving the story and serving the characters are what you're there to do, which is also makes it super important, especially, I mean, in TV, it's hit or miss. I did a pilot last year for NBC, and every single person in that video village was in agreement. And so it made it a really wonderful work environment. Oftentimes that's not the case, but I feel like it's so important, especially in independent filmmaking, when you're putting together your team, that everybody is working towards the greater goal, and they have a very clear idea of what the greater goal is and how to get there.
Oh yeah. On my first TV project, my producers like did not understand what I was trying to do. And that was really frustrating. But I was so young and I was like, oh my God, somebody thinks I'm good. Like, yes, I'll do it with them. And then it just proved to be so difficult because I wasn't really partnered with the people who truly had the same vision or like understood the subject matter to the depth that I needed them to understand it. And so it's easy when you're young and you're starting out to just like take what's being offered to you because it feels like I don't have any other options. But then you're just going to run into the problem of them just not getting it the whole time. And I'm really lucky now with the people that I'm working with where they're like super passionate about the subject matter, to your point, where aligning in that way makes the whole process so much more beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's so important to like go into projects and be able to go into the team that you trust and that you can work with. I mean, so many times I've gone on to projects and they tried to like we'll take you, but none of the people that helped you get here. And it's proven to be really messy and not great. And so I'm still learning that lesson to this day of like when people are like, no, you can't take, your DP that you know and love and have worked with, but we're going to put you with a complete stranger. And it's just really frustrating. And I'm trying to learn how to navigate that and own my voice and stand in my confidence and be like, guys, like you hired me because of what you saw. Please trust me to then deliver again with the team that I know.
Yeah, and I think it's just being able to have confidence in yourself, confidence in your ability, and standing in your own power to just say, I know what is going to work for this, and please trust me, because it takes a great amount of trust. Your producers, you all have to trust each other. Your actors have to trust you. You have to trust your actors. When that is not there, it makes it very hard.
And I think, this is the Her Voice panel, so let's talk about being a woman for a second. I've definitely encountered many different situations that were either from my own projection of my own feeling like I need to prove my worth, which like my male counterpart in that situation never felt like when they probably should have. Or being in a position to like try to overassert my dominance because I'm like overcompensating for that like lack of confidence or worth that I have within myself. So I think finding that place where you're strong enough and know your worth enough to own it and ask for it, but without falling into like the archetype that they want you to fall into. Like being a woman is like waiting to fall into the manhole of the bitchy female archetype that, you know what I mean? Like that's just waiting for you to fall into it. So it's like really moderating your own energy and not knowing it from your heart and soul and not needing to prove it to anybody else is really like the way we have to walk into rooms. And that's not just work in pitching things or making things. That's work that you have to do every single day on your own self.
It's all internal work. I'm so 1,000% on that. Like people are like, how do you go pitch? How do you have the confidence to stand up in front of a crew of 100 and lead? And it's like, there's so much work that has to be done at home, in your head, meditating, whatever, really like writing down what do you like about yourself and knowing that you are worthy of being in the position that you are. Because once you know that and you own that, everyone else responds in accordance. They're like, oh, you know what you're doing. I'm going to follow you because my job is to follow you. But if you are expressing to everyone else that like they can feel your fear. Everyone can feel your fear when you're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Everyone can feel it. So there's just so much work that has to be done before you even like look at the script.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. Absolutely. I'm in that place right now.
Let's talk about energy.
But it is true. I feel like, Steph, you hit on something that I think is important to kind of go back to, and something that I have seen women do on set. There is something that happens sometimes, especially with women who have kind of been brought up in the quote unquote boys club era, where they made it, and a lot of female directors I'm speaking of, where they are so in their masculine that it's just so overwhelming, and it feels really combative in a way. And I feel like that's something that I work on all the time, and that's like the personal work, right? Like the masculine and the feminine. I think the beauty of being a woman is like our intuition is so strong, and I feel like when you're working, yes, like I'm a very direct person. Like when I'm in work mode, I'm super direct. I answer questions very directly, and it comes off as like, oh, she's not very warm, or I can't like fluff you all the time.
Whoa. Okay. What is this panel about?
But you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We do.
But I think but that's like interesting work that we have to do as women, because what I've been finding, and like I'm in pre-production for a film right now, and I have female investors, I have female producer, a female writer, and it's such a different energy, it's a different vibe, and the communication is different, and I don't feel like I need to like prove myself in any way, because I know that they believe that I can do it, and so I don't have to kind of like put on, but I do feel like that is something that we can easily slip into. I've done it before on sets where it's like, especially because I'm a younger woman and I look younger, and people come up and they're like, oh, you're doing this? And it's like, I am. But then it makes me feel like I have to assert myself even more. And it's actually the opposite. Like I'm so confident in the work that I'm doing, I shouldn't have to like peacock as like but you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, because when you're peacocking, you're actually negating your true strength.
Yeah.
And so, we have to be careful not to be in reaction all the time with our environment. And that's like a really difficult thing. Like I'm so sensitive and reactive to people, and it's been like a lot of work to protect my why, or, my own energy, in order to not be like, oh, let me now say fuck off. And sorry, I'm cursing. And like, sorry. and really just know that my strength is in the vision that I have, the heart that I have for the thing, the understanding, and you will, it's fine to be direct. That doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with that. But it's like a masculine energy is not our nature, but we've just been conditioned. Obviously we have it. We're all both things. We're all things. But it's been our nature to be in that like reactive place. Like I'm sure every girl in here has had to like in their dating life with men have to stop being in their masculine because you're just running 100 miles an hour in your work and then not knowing how to come into your feminine. And I think it's not just about doing that in dating, it's about doing it in your work as well, and asking what really is your feminine strength.
Yeah. Well, because I also think too, like as filmmakers, the female gaze is so important, and so we need to be in our feminine in order to kind of tell those stories. And even like, I think about watching something that a guy directed versus watching something that a woman directed, like a sex scene, for example. Like they're just shot very differently. Now, granted, there are some men who can shoot very beautiful. I'm not just trying to like, single them out, but it is this thing, right? Like where if innately we're placing the camera differently because we have a different kind of like language with it. You know what I mean?
Just going back a little bit, I definitely had that when I first started in producing, and before I started as a filmmaker, I was working at a bar. I was bartending and I was a cocktail waitress, used to like getting slapped in the ass every night and being like accosted. And I was like, oh, I want to get out of here. That's why I went into filmmaking. And I came in with a very, I got to get out of here. But I was very like, mentally like, I got to be
Hollywood will
dude.
save your abuse
that's
for
it,
sure.
that's
Yeah.
No, but I was like a producer, so I was like, I was the boss this time. But I was like, I gotta be a dude, and people cannot look at me sexually. I have to wear loose clothing, and I've got to talk like this, and I can't smile, and I have to know everything. And that's how I was very much doing in the beginning of my career, and just being like, okay, why am I speaking so deep? This is not me. This is so weird, you know? And then like as the years went by, I started to forget, like, you know what? I don't need to concentrate on being a woman or a man or whatever. I'm just me, and I like me, and I'm your boss. So, you know,
Yeah.
it was a different. It was a transition. It was definitely a transition.
I actually want to open it up to the audience because I feel like many of you have a lot of really great questions, and I don't want to have the time cut short. So we're going to pass a microphone around. Whoever has a question.
What's a mistake that you've learned from in your careers that you would be willing to talk about in a public forum?
I have answers that are so not what I should answer. I'm like sleeping with male comedians. No. Mistakes I've learned from, I would say rushing is a big one. Like wanting to get something done so badly and wanting it to be like on my timeline instead of being more, I guess, to Alex's point, like receptive and feminine about letting the pieces like fall into place and letting the timing happen more organically and like being more in a place of trust. I have been in times like too pedal to the metal and like, no, like I have just this like singular focus and it has to happen this way and it has to happen in this time. And whenever I've done that, it's not happened in the way that I want and or at all, because I'm so rushed and focused on getting to the finish line that I'm not letting it inform itself and actually not allowing for like the magic of my own point of attraction to keep building it. You know what I mean? Like when we close ourselves off like that, then we miss creativity and we miss connections and we miss new ideas for the thing. Like anything that I've waited on, like the show that I'm about to do now, like the new podcast, not the TV show, I had this idea like a few years ago and I pulled out the treatment for it and I was like, thank fucking God this did not happen then, because it would have been a fraction of as good as I can make it now because of how much life I've lived, how much the world has changed, how much my ideas about things have changed. So I just think like being patient, and if something isn't happening in the way that you want it to happen, like it's okay to divert focus. It's okay to follow what's actually inspiring you instead of being like, no, I told myself that this was going to be the thing, and so now this has to be the thing. It's like, hey, maybe that's the thing in 5 years.
Yeah.
Your life is going to be long. You don't have to do everything right now, and maybe there's something else that's waiting for you to stop being so stubborn and start giving it a little attention.
I think putting ourselves on a timeline is really detrimental to the creative process, but also just as human beings. I mean, I feel like we do that just in general. I think as women, I know I put myself on a timeline just in my own personal life, and you know, similar to what we were talking about at the Her Voice film block, you know, the idea of like being a mom and having a career and when do you do it and how do I do it and all of those things. And I feel like the more you put yourself on those timelines, the more like compounded it gets. And then there's like no breathing room for, like Steph said, the magic to happen.
And no shade, but timelines are very masculine.
Yes, exactly.
I've had so many mistakes in my career. I mean, so many, but that's like the only way that you learn. But probably the biggest mistake, which the biggest lesson to learn from, was really just not trusting myself and just letting other people give their opinion, being like, okay, well, I'm so lucky to be here and I'm just so new and I don't know that, even though I knew in my gut, like, this is not going to work. This is going to come off corny as hell. And they're just like, no, we got to do this. We got to do this. It's like, oh, okay, we'll do it. We'll do it. And then you release it and then it's like, all the comments are, this was corny as hell. And it's like, I knew it. And you're just like, why didn't I trust myself?
Yeah.
Why didn't I listen to my gut? Why didn't I? And I kick myself over and over for just not listening to my gut. And I guess that just comes with experience again. Like, and that couldn't have happened if I didn't have those mistakes. So. Yeah, mistakes.
What is one thing you do when you are in a creative flow and you like have so many ideas, or you have so much you want to say and you are trying to narrow down your voice and like how you actually want to execute something?
Okay, I'll answer that first. Okay, I have a whiteboard in my house and I've got several projects on it that are like top 5 projects that are always like swimming around my head, and there's more that come, so I put them on there. But the ones that stay on there are the ones that will not leave your head for like at least a year. That are like, I've got to express this, and I'll put them there, and then I'll have like by certain dates, like, okay, I gotta have like an outline for that. I gotta like break it out into acts. I've gotta like get the script out and get feedback so that it's like a very structured thing, because I do have so many ideas swirling around all the time that sometimes I can just like, it feels overwhelming. So I have to like break it down into pieces. That's how I organize.
I'm not organized at all. I voice record myself because my brain moves faster than my hand. And I also feel like when I'm speaking stream of consciousness, I can really understand what I'm even getting at or what I'm talking about. And then like as I'm talking, the idea will start to inform itself. Like I'll listen back and I'm talking, and I'm like, oh, that's good. Like I'm talking to myself. I don't know who I'm talking to, but there's somebody that I'm interfacing with. And then I'll listen back to the voice memos and I'll either be like, okay, yeah, that has legs, or like, you're high, you know? And and that's sort of how like I distill them. And then if it's motivating enough, then yes, like I write it down. But if you're just talking about like the raw creative sort of like unhinged aspect of ideas, I think that using voice memos, and also there's like this thing that I've started doing recently, which is like, I always have thought like being a writer is sitting and writing, you know, and like I have to sit on my computer, I have to take it somewhere, and I have to like, here we go, which that is a part of it. Obviously somebody has to do the typing, and that somebody is you. But for so much of it, writing is like moving. Like I have to like, I go outside, I go on hikes, I take my phone, I voice record, I go to the gym, you know what I mean? Like I move my body and I move my energy, and at that same time, I do the work. So that I'm not feeling like, oh shoot, like I exercised and I went in nature and I was so unproductive, because then there's that like critic, right, that comes in that tries to tell you that you haven't used your time well enough. So it's kind of like, if you can do both at the same time, and also like when I'm sitting there, nothing's happening. As soon as I put my sneakers on and go into nature, then all of a sudden it's like the muse is ready to reveal herself. So I think kind of reframing it out of this, like, it's not college, you know what I mean? It's art. So you can do it in any setting that you want to do it in.
I like that.
Okay, cool.
I like that.
Great.
It's true, because like
Yeah.
your energy can get like really stuck.
Yeah,
and
get
you're
stuck.
just like, I suck. I can't think of anything.
And then you're like chugging coffee, eating weed, drinking kava. You know, you're like, please make something happen. And you don't need to do any of that. You just need to go outside.
yeah, you take a walk and then it just like strikes you and you're like, oh, there it
Yeah,
is.
wow. I didn't need to be so deranged.
On the note of having so many ideas, and Marty with your whiteboard, and at what point do you then go through and say, okay, actually I want to put my energy towards this? Like, how do you know which ones to kill and which ones to really get forward motion and keep working on?
For me, it's the ones that are the obsessive thoughts.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, there it is. Holy shit, I gotta talk about it. I gotta write it down right now. Like it's now or never, and it just feels like you have to get it out.
Yeah, like if it's an earworm and, you know, you find yourself like in other situations and it's kind of like, it's sort of hunting you, like that's when you're like, okay, that's the one. And if it doesn't come back to you, it's not the time for it. You know, like I was saying with the other thing, like that idea was like dead to me. you know, and then all of a sudden it started coming back and I was like, oh, it wants something.
Yeah.
So just like, yeah, the obsessive kind of need to do it type of thing.
Yeah, that's how I prioritize.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Anybody else? Yes. Can we get?
Hi, this question is for both of y'all. So, in this day and age, even though it's 2023, if you're not a cis, straight, white, able-bodied man, you know, you're in the minority when it comes to being a filmmaker. And I do think that that's something to celebrate, but it's also hard sometimes to balance how to celebrate that and not get pigeonholed into telling those stories if you're very public about how proud you are, you know, to be a woman, a Latina, whatever it is. So I just want to know how y'all balance that in your career.
For me, yes, people will pigeonhole you depending on what you make. Once they see your shorts or whatever and you're putting it out there in your scripts, they'll say, oh, you're the person who does stuff about penguins. Okay, every time I think about penguins, you're the person, you know? So like what I've really made a conscious effort to do is to create stuff that I want to do. If I want to do a dance movie, I made a short about dance. If I want to do horror, I made a short about horror. I wrote a script about horror. And people see me in different ways. So I will do musicals, I'll do horror films, I'll do thrillers, I'll do dramas because I created it first. And then people see like, oh, you can do that. That's your interest. I think people can only pigeonhole you when they've seen what you've done as an example. So if you want to do many things, just do it. And then people see you as that.
Yeah, I think we need to be very careful about, you know, being in reaction to what people say that we are. We are not the projections that everyone else wants us to be. So it doesn't really matter if someone's trying to pigeonhole you, as long as you're not doing that to yourself. I think it's easy to be sucked into a place where you're doing that to yourself because you want to put something into the world and you want to be accepted. And so you're like, you might even be unconscious about the way that you're responding to that. So it's like just being really, really aware of the fact that whatever someone's idea of you isn't necessarily you. They're just seeing like one thing. You're so many things. You're everything. And so don't let whatever they're saying that you are, be who you are. Define that for yourself. You define it for yourself, and then people respond to you. You know, like life is our own projection, not people's projection onto us. And I'm obviously saying this as a cis white female, so maybe it's easier for me in some ways, but I'm Jewish, so, you know, no.
No, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Everything you're saying is absolutely true.
Yeah, but it's hard because you're like, well, if they're saying it, especially when you're young, you're not really as aware of the fact that like you've also been formed in other people's eyes for your whole life. From your childhood, people have been telling you, oh, you know, you're this, you're that. And so you've kind of absorbed those things. And I think getting older and coming into your voice is really about discerning what's true for you and what's true for other people about you, and sort of clearing everyone else's kind of ideas out of your field so that you can be in your own truth.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. It's like, it's choice.
Yeah.
You can hear all of these opinions of what people think that you are, and you can choose to believe them or to act completely opposite of it. You know? Like, all right, this is TMI, but I'm going to tell you anyway. My dad told me I was going to be a maid, that I was going to be nothing. And I heard that and I was like, fuck you. I'm going to be very successful. I'm going to live my dreams. And I have. And I am. And that was a choice.
Yes. Yes.
Can you, both of you, speak to the process, or maybe all three of you actually, speak to the process of assembling teams for short films? Does it come together really organically? Is it sometimes you go out of your way to like reach out to somebody who you might put on a pedestal type of situation? Just speaking to the process of assembling your teams.
For me, I had done a lot of producing. So the way that I had met a lot of people are through things like this, you know, networking events, film festivals, and I would meet people. And if I felt like we connected, I'd be like, well, let me see your work, and then I'd watch their work, and then we'd meet again and again. And then we're like, you take recommendations from other people. How was it working with them? And then I would take them onto my team. A lot of the people that I work with today are people that I met at, like, we did short films like 8 years ago, 10 years ago. And I had heard from them because another friend had worked for them. Like, recommendations, I think, are everything. How you treat a PA, an intern, and how you treat the CEO or director or whatever, financier, it tells you a lot of how a person is. And I love working on sets where people see each other as equals, that really build each other up, that can really respect the work that we're doing and put their all into it. And when I see that quality, I know that we're going to have like a lifetime of jobs together. That's what I look for. And I think, going to events like this are very, very important to meet people that are just as passionate as you are.
Yeah, the no asshole policy on set is a huge one for sure. Living in LA, I don't live in LA anymore. I live in Austin. So it was interesting because when I was in LA and I was doing shorts, it was just kind of like when you have such a low budget and you're just kind of putting something together, you get a couple of friends together who are filmmakers as well, and you just go and do it and hope for the best. But through those processes, like, you actually see who you work really well with and who you want to continue on the journey with. And so when you do get a little bit of money and when you do have a budget, it's like you kind of like collect people. Like every single project that I have ever done, my friends Chase and Ryan have done the music. They're a company called Chromosomes, and they're doing the music for my feature. And so they started with me in my first short when I did in 2017, where I did not have the money to pay them, but like, with the notion that when I can pay you, I will bring you along with me. And so for me, it's like kind of cherry picking the people that I've enjoyed working with, because ultimately you want to work with people you enjoy working with. And then, similarly at this festival, Suzanne Weinert, who's sitting over there, she and I have been working together since the start of this festival. When I met her, she saw a short that I directed and then asked if I would produce her short. And I did that. And then I just acted in her short. Now I'm directing her feature. And so you just find people that you work really well with and that you really respect. That's a huge thing too, is respect. I respect her ideas. She respects my ideas. And, they're not always going to be the same, but like, it's such a big, big part of it. Making a movie is so hard. It's so hard. And when you have personalities or people who are just assholes or who are not enjoyable to be around, it makes it even harder. So yeah, for me, it's just like making sure the vibe is there, and also that they're talented with what they do,
I have been in many creative partnerships, as you know, since you're my friend. And, I always tend to find partnership through friendship or through being a fan of somebody. I think like with my partner who I wrote my TV show with, I just was a fan of his since like 2008. Like everything he made, I was like, I'm obsessed with just like your voice and your tone. And like when I watch it, I want to be in it. I want to be involved in your creativity. And forever, like we just became friends. Like if he had a film, I would go to it. I just showed up. And I think that's like a part of it. Like you're saying, like showing up. It wasn't like I was showing up to his stuff because I was like, I want him to do something for me. I had nothing to offer him. There was nothing for us to work together on. It was just like, I was being moved by what he was doing. So I was showing up for it. And then when the time came, he actually tapped me and was like, I want to write something with you. And I was like, it's a pandemic. We're retired. I was like, we're not working anymore. But he had finally had nothing to do and was ready to like, I had sent him my other pilot or whatever. And so I said yes, and then that's how everything happened. But it was like built on the back of what ended up being like a 13-year friendship before we ever started working together. And then because of that, when we started writing together, I remember he sent the pilot to his wife, and she was like, I honestly can't tell who wrote what. It was like we were just so close at that point that our voices had like merged. And yeah, and our partnership, and because I've also had other partnerships that have failed or that have ended, now when I walk into this with him, like I'm a better version of myself and know how to have certain boundaries, what to communicate, what not to kind of like fuck up because of what happened, to your question, regrets or mistakes, because of what has happened in the past. I'm aware of how to have new partnerships. And so, I don't know, I guess like for me, assembling team is about inspiration and feeling like when you see somebody making something that speaks to you, that's because there's a part of you that's that thing too.
I also I would love for you to kind of tell everybody how you started writing this pilot, because I remember it was during the pandemic and we were having a conversation and Steph said to me, I'm kind of like, I'm going back and forth and I'm writing a scene, like we're kind of challenging each other. If you want to say, tell us how it kind of came to be, because it really just came to be just like as an exercise.
It was an exercise and an accident, and that's also kind of amazing because it speaks to like everything else I ever did that didn't move to TV was something that I was like, I want this to be a show. And you know, the fates were like, that's cute, but you want it too much. You need to calm down. You're thirsty. And with this, it was like, my friend was like, I want to write with you. I want to write a pilot with you. And I was like, you're so annoying. We're retired. You know what I mean? Like, it's my dream to retire at 30. We're good. And he was like, wouldn't leave me alone. Finally, he like hoodwinked me and made me go on a hike with him and then turned the hike into a creative conversation. And I was like, again, I don't want this. And he was like, come on, it'll be fun. And we just had like the simplest thread. Like the thread was like a guy and a girl who are friends in LA. Like that was it. It was nothing. And I mean, that's literally nothing. That's probably what we've all thought is an interesting thing, and it's not. And so he's like, how about this? You just write 4 pages and you send it to me. And then I'll write 4 pages. And then I'll send it back to you. And then we'll have a pilot in however many time based on like 4 pages back and forth. So then finally, I was so bored after a week of like being in my tub and eating edibles that I was like, fine, I'll do something. You know, like, okay, I'll write this dumb pilot with you. And then within like less than a month, we had a pilot, and it's because and you know, then it became fun, you know, like, then once the process started happening, he'd call me and be like, what if this? And I'd be like, oh my God, what if that? Like, we just started kind of getting wrapped up in, because once you've like finished Netflix, there's not much more for you to do. Like, you have to start being creative. So then we had a pilot, and after we read it back, we're like, wait, is this like low key really good? Like, because we didn't care, you know what I mean? And I think there's something to be said for that. Like, when you care so much, you have such tunnel vision and you're taking yourself so seriously. With this exercise, we were just like, let's do all of the craziest shit we would ever want to do in our writing. And then it ended up working because we had no attachments. And like every step of the way, like, then he's like, oh, I just casually sent it to these producers that I know who are like the dopest producers ever and have made all of my favorite shows. And I was like, you did what? And then he's like, yeah. And then they called and they're like, we really like it. We want to develop it. I'm like, what's happening? Like, this was supposed to be a joke. And and then again, they're like, we want to pitch it. And then FX wants to do it. And we're like, I don't understand what's going on. But it's been such a lesson in like non-attachment and just like being playful and having fun. And I think when your art becomes your profession, you stop having fun and you start being like, I need to make money. I need to make it. Like, I need to prove to my family or my hometown or myself that like I'm worth it. But like, what did we really start this for? Like, I became an artist because I didn't want to get a job. Like, if I'm being honest, you know, I didn't know what I was doing in college. I'm like, you mean like I can study miming? Like, cool, you know? And that's like the genesis of why you do something. And then you start to become professional and like all the joy gets sucked out of it. And so I think the lesson of this project has just been about like keeping the joy alive, keeping the fun alive, and being flexible, like, you know, having to take certain things out of it that once we sold the pilot, then they were like, okay, well, you can't actually, you know, what they said is we're not J.J. Abrams. So we're like, okay, we can't make this a sci-fi show, but that's fine, you know? And then we were flexible and it's become its own thing. And it's really cool.
I think that's key, like letting go.
Yeah.
Like there's, like I am someone who just like, go, 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 go. And I think there's times where I'm just like, I can't control what happens. Like there's, you literally cannot control anything. So like as much as you create, it's like you just put it out there and you just hope for the best. And whatever people can take on, like that's awesome. But like there's a lesson in like being like, just let go and have fun. Like exactly, like we chose this type of life so that we could enjoy our lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Not be at a 9 to 5 and hate everything. You know?
And I don't know, like I kind of want to share this just because it was a really special moment, which is that when we were gonna sell the show, I was so nervous because it was like a Zoom pitch. And I'm not really like good on Zoom. I mean, I'm fine, but I'm better in person because I can like read the energy and we can exchange and we can have like a social kind of interaction. On Zoom, I just feel like I'm an alien inside of a box in space and I can't like feel what's going on and it's very uncomfortable to me. So I was so like, don't you feel like on Zoom you're just like talking a lot and you're like, am I bombing? Like, what's happening here? It's like so not the way of like human spirit interaction. And so I was like, I have to meditate. Like normally I meditate for like 15 minutes. I think I was meditating for like an hour. Like I was so nervous that I just needed to like be fully inside. And at the very end of my meditation, I got this message that was like, there's going to be a question that's going to get asked that's going to be at the end, and that's going to be what sells the show. So I was like, okay. So I was like waiting. At one point during the pitch, my partner told a lie. He was telling this whole story about his like ayahuasca journey, and he lied and said I was there. I was not there. So then he's like, and Steph was there, and she was like looking at me, and she was trying to hold space for me, and I'm like, this never happened. So I'm like, yeah, totally. He was crazy. Like I don't know what. So then it kind of set me off my game. I was like super freaked out. And then at the very end, the producer that was completely quiet the entire time asked a question, and it was for me. And I was like, oh my God, this is the question. And I answered it. And then
What was the question?
the question was like about what's an example of a time when my show is about like, it's like a spiritual satire. And what's an example of a time when you've been like giving someone your power away and they've not been able to hold it, or they've shown themselves to be like a charlatan or like a snake oil salesman. And I had like just had this crazy experience with this life coach who like had a nervous breakdown on a Zoom with me and screamed at me and told me she didn't need to be there. And was like on Zoom in pandemic. And I'm like, first of all, you asked to be my life coach. I didn't need a life coach. I'm doing this so that I can promote your business. And you're mad at me for like shifting up my homework. And she's like, you know what? I don't even need this. And she's like screaming at me. I literally was like, okay, I closed my computer mid-scream. Because I was like, I'm in my bed. Like, I didn't even need this conversation with you. That's hilarious. And yeah, it was like so crazy. And I told this to them. And then once we sold the show, our producers were like, they loved the life coach story. And that's what like really cinched it for them, like the personal experience. And I was like, fucking A.
That's amazing.
I knew it. It was pretty crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I have one last question. And it's a little bit of a deeper question, but also doesn't have to be. What legacy do you want to leave behind?
My beauty. No. No, I'm joking. Wow. I do have an answer kind of for this, but I feel like my dream is that whatever I make or whatever I say or whoever I touch is able to like, for me, it's about like awakening consciousness. Sorry, not to be so.
Samesies.
Okay, cool, great. Like it's really about recognizing that we have lived, we have grown in a world that has a very destructive consciousness, and it's like trapped, and we're seeing it in so many aspects of the world where all of these systems are falling apart and breaking, and there's so much like on fire literally, and sickness and despair and mental illness, and all of these things are because the paradigm that we're living in doesn't have anywhere to go, and it's dead, and it's making us sick. And so what I want is for people to be inspired to find their own health, make their own choices, be loving, like be expansive, not be limited. And then hopefully through thousands of years from now, one seed or two seeds that I've planted as far as imagining a new world, like happen, and I don't think that one person can like shift the paradigm, but I think through all of us doing work that is elevating the consciousness and coming from love and coming from a place of trying to do better and trying to move away from the things that have held people down or made them so sick. For me, it's all about health and healing personally, but that's just my corner of things. I think together we can ask for more and we can do better.
Yeah, same. I mean, very, very similar to what you're saying. And I think that destruction and that all of that shit is because we see each other as separate and that we are defined by this, and we are separate and we are blah, blah, blah. And that's how we kill each other because we see each other as enemies when that's not the case at all. And through the movies I make and the shows or whatever, I want people to realize that we are all one and the same inside and that we can survive all this shit if we work together and love each other more and not see each other as separate. And that's my biggest goal
Yeah.
in making. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like when, oh yeah, yay. I just want to say, like, when I was younger, I felt like, who cares? Like, who do you think you are? You know, like, and that's kind of like what my parents said to me. Or they loved me, but it was still like they didn't step into that place. And I think there's that voice inside of all of us that says, like, can a person really make a difference? And like, does it really matter? And are you so self-important? It's not about your ego at all. It's just about like holding a bigger vision for the collective and being like, why are we giving our power away to all of these systems and all of these institutions that do not have our best interest at heart? And how can we tell stories and find joy? That's our biggest resistance, is to not say yes to the things that make us feel and act like shit. I really feel like that. And so, I don't know, I just, fuck all that shit.
Well, and it also just brings it back to the original point of, if you can just change or make an impact on one person, then that one person, if you're elevating them and elevating their spirit and elevating, you know, their consciousness, who knows what then they're capable of.
And they affect
everybody.
everybody.
It's a ripple effect.
Something Allie and I were talking about at breakfast was about like awareness. You know, I'm like, what if like America becomes the next great like wellness paradigm, you know? And I'm like having all these like crazy ideas. And she's like, well, doesn't it just start with awareness? And it's like, yes, like people can't change things that they aren't aware need to be changed. People will think, why do I keep eating this thing and keep feeling bad? Like, when I was told and sold that this was okay, well, it's not okay. Now we need to tell you that it's not okay. Now I know it's not okay, so I'm not going to keep doing that. It's like, just by awakening our awareness of these things, we do start making different choices. That's how it happens, slowly but surely. I mean, we got here from thousands of years. Yeah. So we're gonna need to move forward in thousands of years and just all have a little bit more fun while we're doing it.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here.